There's a particular ache that comes with being alone. Not a physical pain, but something deeper, more existential. It feels unnatural, almost like a glitch in the very design of life itself. We are born into a world overflowing with people, and yet many of us find ourselves disconnected, adrift, as if life has quietly turned away from us. The silence becomes oppressive. The stillness can feel like a weight pressing on your chest. And in that quiet, a question begins to surface. Why me? But what if I told you this experience isn't some tragic mistake or cruel punishment? What if being alone, truly alone, was meant to be a crucial chapter in your life, a turning point that leads not to despair, but to awakening? Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists in history, didn't see solitude as something to be feared or pitied. To him, isolation was a sacred space, a necessary condition for genuine self-discovery. In fact, he believed that moments of deep aloneness were not random or meaningless. They were invitations, initiations, portals into a deeper understanding of the self. When you feel like life has isolated you, it's easy to assume you've been forgotten, that others are thriving, laughing, connecting, loving, while you're left behind. It can feel like abandonment. But what Jung understood is that people who are called to a deeper purpose often walk a different path, one that requires solitude, not because they are unworthy of others, but because the noise of the world would only drown out the inner transformation they're meant to undergo. Most people view loneliness as a failure, as a symptom of something being wrong. But from a deeper psychological and spiritual perspective, isolation is often the exact condition needed for profound growth. It's not life rejecting you, it's life preparing you. Think for a moment about the people who have shaped the world, the thinkers, the artists, the spiritual leaders. Their greatness was not born in the middle of crowds or constant connection. It was forged in quiet, in separation, in moments when they had no choice but to look inward. The Buddha sat in solitude beneath the Bodhi tree. Jesus wandered the desert for 40 days. Jung himself retreated into deep reflection, documenting his inner experiences in the famous Red Book, a journal of spiritual and psychological awakening. These were not passive retreats, they were deliberate confrontations with the self. Why is this necessary? Because transformation rarely happens in comfort. You don't evolve when you're surrounded by distractions. True change occurs in silence, in discomfort, in the confrontation between who you think you are and who you truly are beneath the layers. If you find yourself in a season of isolation, consider this. Perhaps you're being prepared. Prepared for something that can only be discovered in the absence of noise, something powerful and uniquely yours. But here's the truth. Most people won't make it through. They won't endure the loneliness long enough to uncover its purpose. Instead, they interpret it as rejection. They spiral into despair, convinced they are unwanted, unworthy, unloved. And this illusion is the real danger of isolation. The loneliness is not what breaks people. It's the belief that it will last forever, that there is no meaning in it. But Jung would argue that this is the greatest misunderstanding of all. Solitude is not a curse. It's a mirror, and within that mirror lies your truest reflection, if only you are brave enough to look. When the distractions fade, the social media feeds, the casual conversations, the constant motion, you are left face to face with yourself. Your mind grows louder. Thoughts that have long been buried begin to rise. Insecurities you've ignored become deafening. Regrets you've suppressed bubble up like ghosts. It can feel like drowning in your own mind. This is where most people try to escape. They run back to distractions, reach for their phones, dive into new relationships, surround themselves with noise. But those who remain, who stay in that silence and face what they've been avoiding, they begin a journey Jung called individuation. Individuation is the process of becoming fully yourself, not the version of you that was shaped by expectations, by culture, by family, but the raw, authentic self buried underneath it all. It's not a comfortable process. In fact, it can be agonizing, but it is necessary. Most people live as fragments. Their identities are borrowed, shaped by what others want, by who society says they should be. But in solitude, those influences fall away. What remains is the unfiltered you, and that is both terrifying and liberating. The reason solitude can be so painful is because it forces you to confront the truth. Maybe the life you've built isn't really yours. Maybe the person you've been isn't your real self. And without the external noise, your subconscious begins to whisper, then shout, and finally demand your attention. But again, this is not punishment, it's purification. The pain is not senseless, it's sacred. It burns away illusion, it clears the fog, it strips away everything that is not truly you. And in its place, something new begins to emerge. Still, many people reject this process. Instead of seeing solitude as an opportunity, they see it as a failure. They convince themselves they've been left behind. They feel cursed. They fall into bitterness. They waste this rare opportunity by trying to escape it rather than listening to what it's trying to reveal. But Jung had a warning for those who cling to suffering. Don't identify with it. Don't build your identity around pain. Yes, pain is a teacher, but it's not meant to be your home. You're supposed to learn from it, not live in it. The more you resist the silence, the more it controls you. But when you embrace it, lean into it, sit with it, something incredible happens. You start to hear your true voice beneath all the noise. The ones who emerge from solitude changed, stronger, wiser, more self-aware, are not the ones who fought it. They are the ones who surrendered to it, who used the time to reflect, to unlearn, and to remember who they were before the world told them who to be. And this is why isolation, though it feels like emptiness, is in truth a sacred threshold. A passage, a trial by fire. Not everyone will cross it, but those who do will never be the same. When you are finally alone, truly and undeniably alone, you enter a kind of psychological wilderness. There are no signposts, no familiar distractions, no one clapping for your efforts or offering you a map. You are left with only yourself. And this, while terrifying, is exactly the point. Solitude strips away the noise of the world, so you can hear what has always been speaking inside you, your true self. It is the only space where you can begin to ask the questions that matter. Who am I, beyond the roles I play? What do I believe, apart from what I've been taught? What do I want, not just for survival, but for meaning? Carl Jung believed that the unconscious mind, the hidden reservoir of our desires, fears, instincts, and forgotten truths, becomes more accessible when we are removed from external influence. In the quiet, the unconscious speaks more clearly, not in words but in feelings, dreams, memories, and sudden insights that seem to rise from nowhere. These are not random, they are messages, clues from your deeper self. In society, we're often encouraged to keep moving, to stay busy, to avoid the discomfort of stillness. But true transformation requires that you stop, you pause, you feel, and you listen, even when what you hear scares you. This is the alchemy of solitude, the slow, mysterious process of turning silence into selfhood. It's not immediate. It doesn't happen in a single epiphany. It unfolds gradually, like a seed pushing through the soil. First there is darkness, then pressure, then something stirs, something begins to grow, but it requires your cooperation. If you fight the solitude, if you numb it or run from it, the transformation cannot happen. You remain stuck in a loop, repeating old patterns, clinging to surface identities, afraid to face the depth of who you really are. Jung's idea of shadow work becomes essential here. The shadow is everything we've pushed away about ourselves, traits we dislike, emotions we suppress, truths we pretend not to know. These parts of us don't disappear. They wait in the dark. And when we enter solitude, the shadow steps forward. You might feel anger you didn't know you were holding, sadness you've kept locked away for years, guilt, envy, fear. It can be overwhelming, but Jung taught that integrating the shadow, making peace with these parts instead of denying them, is the key to wholeness. So solitude, if embraced with courage, becomes the arena where this integration takes place. You begin to reclaim yourself, piece by piece, painfully, powerfully. Most people think happiness comes from avoiding pain, but Jung understood that real peace comes from understanding it, from facing it, from no longer being afraid of the darker aspects of your psyche. Because when you can sit with your pain, listen to it, learn from it, it loses its power to control you. And something remarkable begins to happen. Clarity emerges. You start to see which relationships were built on fear or obligation. You recognize the ways you've abandoned yourself to please others. You notice how you've been performing instead of living, and you begin to reclaim your life, not the life others expected from you, but the one that feels authentically yours. This is the kind of freedom solitude offers. It doesn't come quickly, it doesn't come easily, but it comes honestly. In this quiet space, you may rediscover passions that once lit you up before the world told you they weren't practical. You may hear your inner child, not the wounded one, but the curious, playful, creative one, whispering again. You may remember dreams you left behind because they didn't fit the mold, and suddenly those dreams don't feel so impossible anymore. They feel necessary. The tragedy is that most people will never reach this depth. They'll skim the surface of their own lives. They'll avoid solitude at all costs, mistaking it for loneliness, missing the treasure buried just beneath the discomfort. But if you've been brought into solitude, even against your will, consider that life may be offering you something greater than comfort. It may be offering you truth, and truth is not always soft or easy to digest. It cuts, it exposes, it demands change. But it also liberates. It clears away the false to make room for the real. That's why people who come out the other side of solitude often radiate a different kind of strength. It's not loud or aggressive. It's quiet, rooted, unshakable. They no longer seek validation from others because they've learned how to validate themselves. They are not desperate for attention because they've made peace with being unseen. And they don't fear being misunderstood. They'd rather be authentic than approved. This is the gift of solitude. It gives you back to yourself, but it's not a gift that's handed to you. You have to earn it. You have to sit through the nights when the silence feels like it will crush you. You have to face the thoughts that haunt you. You have to cry, sometimes rage, sometimes break open. And then, only then, something new begins to take shape inside you. A stronger you, a clearer you. Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. But those who do face themselves, not just once, but repeatedly, with honesty and humility, they become something rare in this world. They become whole. So if you find yourself in a season of solitude, don't rush to escape it. Don't fill it with noise. Don't numb it with distraction. Instead, listen, feel, breathe. Trust that this space, as empty as it seems, is fertile ground for something extraordinary to grow, something no one else can give you, a deep, unshakable relationship with yourself. Because in the end, that's what solitude is really about. Not isolation, not punishment, but reunion with the self you were always meant to become. There is a kind of sacred fire hidden within solitude. One that burns not to destroy you, but to refine you. It is uncomfortable, yes. At times it can feel like punishment. But the truth is, solitude is a crucible, and only those willing to step into its heat will emerge transformed. When everything familiar has been stripped away, the voices of others, the distractions, the roles you used to play, something raw and honest remains. You, not the version others see, not the one you've curated for the world, but the unfiltered, vulnerable, quietly powerful self that has been waiting for space to breathe. Jung saw this kind of experience not as a detour from life, but as the very heart of it. He believed that life itself pushes us again and again into encounters with our unconscious mind, that vast inner world filled with dreams, fears, instincts, and forgotten truths. But the door to that world rarely opens in noise. It opens in silence, in solitude, in those moments when you feel forgotten by the world, when the invitations stop coming, when your phone stays silent and the stillness feels suffocating. That's when you are closest to something sacred. It might not feel like a gift at first. It might feel like grief. But beneath the ache is an invitation to become something more whole, more honest, more aligned with your essence. Many people view isolation through a purely negative lens. It's seen as social failure, as being unwanted. But solitude, especially the kind that comes uninvited, often signals the beginning of an inner rite of passage, one that the soul requires, even if the ego resists. Think of it like the seasons. No one questions the purpose of winter. It's a time when everything appears still, even dead. And yet, underground, roots are growing, deepening, preparing for the next cycle of growth. Your solitude is no different. On the surface, nothing may seem to be happening, but internally, massive shifts are underway. This is why spiritual traditions across the world, from Buddhism to mystic Christianity to Sufism, all place such reverence on periods of isolation. In silence, in retreat, the soul finds its way home. But make no mistake, this is not a passive experience. You do not simply sit in silence and wait for revelation. You must engage with yourself, actively, compassionately, and honestly. You must listen to what you've ignored. You must feel what you've numbed. You must sit with the ache, not as a victim, but as a seeker. And in doing so, something profound begins to shift. The parts of yourself you once rejected, your fears, your past mistakes, your perceived flaws, begin to feel less like enemies and more like messengers. You realize that these shadows you've spent a lifetime avoiding were never trying to destroy you. They were trying to guide you back to your wholeness. This is the essence of Jung's concept of individuation, the process of integrating all the parts of yourself, including the ones you've pushed away. The goal is not perfection, but unity. To become a fully formed individual is to stand in your contradictions, your light and your shadow, and say, "This is me, entire, undivided." And that kind of self-acceptance rarely happens in the company of others. It requires solitude. It requires discomfort. It requires fire. We live in a culture that tells us to avoid discomfort at all costs, that pain is a sign something is wrong, and that healing must be quick, clean, and painless. But real healing, the kind that reshapes your soul, is messy. It's full of grief and rage and unexpected beauty. It cannot be rushed. It must be honored, and that's what solitude teaches you if you let it. Patience, presence, depth. In solitude, time slows down. You are no longer sprinting through your days, checking boxes and chasing validation. Instead, you begin to notice things, your breath, your thoughts, the subtleties of your own emotions. You become aware of how much noise you've been living with, and you start to feel, perhaps for the first time in years, what it's like to truly be with yourself. This presence is what makes transformation possible. It's in this quiet space that you begin to forgive, not just others, but yourself. You start to let go of the stories that have kept you stuck. I'm not enough. I'm too broken. No one will ever understand me. These narratives lose their grip when You sit with them long enough to see through them. You also begin to dream again, not just of achievements, but of meaning. You ask bigger questions. What does a meaningful life look like for me? What kind of presence do I want to bring into the world? Who am I when no one is watching? And in answering these questions, you begin to rewrite the script of your life. Not based on expectations, but on truth, your truth. Solitude gives you that chance to come home to yourself, to remember what matters, to realign with what feels real, not just what looks good. But make no mistake, this is sacred work, and it's not for the faint of heart. That's why not everyone embraces it. Many will spend their whole lives running from themselves, from the silence, from the pain that lives just beneath the surface. They'll fill their time with noise, their hearts with half-connections, their minds with distraction. But the ones who stop running, who sit down in the fire and let it do its work, they become something rare. They become grounded, rooted, free. They're not perfect. They still feel pain. They still long for connection, but they carry something others don't, a deep inner stability, born not from avoiding life's hardships, but from walking through them with open eyes and a willing heart. This is the alchemy of solitude. Not a punishment, but a passage, a stripping away of the false, a refinement of the soul. And once you've passed through it, you carry the wisdom of fire. You become a lighthouse, steady, silent, and unmistakably alive. There comes a moment, often subtle, rarely loud, when the season of solitude begins to shift. You may not notice it at first. There's no thunderclap, no angel whispering. You've completed your inner work, but you feel it. Quietly, something has changed inside you. The silence that once felt suffocating now feels sacred. The loneliness that used to ache now feels like peace. You've made it through the fire. But what happens next? Many people assume that once you've faced yourself in solitude, you simply return to the world as before, back to routines, to relationships, to the life you left behind. But the truth is, you don't return as the same person, and the world doesn't greet you in the same way. You've been changed. And now, the real test begins, integrating your inner transformation into the external world. Carl Jung understood this phase well. He believed that individuation, the deep psychological process of becoming your whole, authentic self, wasn't complete until you brought your truth back into the world. Transformation that stays locked inside the mind or heart isn't transformation at all. It must be lived, and this is no easy task. When you've gone deep within yourself, your values often shift. The things that once excited you may now feel hollow. Relationships you once clung to may now feel misaligned. Activities that used to fill your calendar may seem meaningless. You begin to crave depth, sincerity, and purpose. At first, this dissonance can be disorienting. You may feel like a stranger in your own life. People may notice your change and not know how to respond. Some may celebrate you. Others may resist, trying to pull you back into old patterns. But the one thing you must remember is this: your growth is real, and it matters. You don't owe the world the version of you that no longer exists. The return from solitude is not about fitting in. It's about showing up, authentically, fully, without apology. That doesn't mean you shout your transformation from the rooftops. Often the most powerful shifts are quiet, grounded, rooted in your actions, not just your words. You begin to move through life with more intention. You speak less, but with more meaning. You choose relationships not out of fear or loneliness, but from a place of alignment. You learn to say no, not out of defensiveness, but because your boundaries have become sacred. You no longer abandon yourself for approval. You've learned how to stand beside yourself, and that loyalty becomes unshakable. This inner strength isn't loud. It doesn't demand attention, but it's unmistakable. People can sense it. They feel it in your presence, in your silence, in the way you hold space for others without losing yourself in the process, and slowly you begin to attract what truly aligns with who you've become. New relationships enter your life, ones based not on performance or people-pleasing, but on mutual respect and authenticity. Opportunities arise that resonate with your deeper values. Your outer world begins to reflect your inner truth. Not instantly, and not without challenge, but steadily. And when difficulties arise, and they will, you face them differently. You no longer see discomfort as a threat. You've sat with your shadow, you've befriended your solitude, you know how to return to yourself. That's your power. In many ways, solitude teaches you how to be your own home. And when you carry that kind of inner rootedness, the world can't shake you in the same way. Rejection stings less. Failure feels more like feedback than condemnation. Silence doesn't scare you anymore. You've learned how to speak to yourself in it, but perhaps the most beautiful part of returning from solitude is that you now carry something others desperately need: presence. In a world addicted to noise, speed and superficial connection, a person who has been shaped by solitude brings a rare kind of calm. You're no longer trying to impress. You're not chasing approval. You're not proving your worth, because you've already found it alone in the dark, and this presence becomes a gift. You begin to notice when others are in pain, even if they hide it well. You listen differently, not waiting for your turn to speak, but truly hearing. You ask deeper questions. You offer space, not solutions. And without even trying, you become a mirror for others, a reminder that they, too, have an inner life waiting to be heard. This is how solitude becomes service, not because you preach what you've learned, but because you embody it. Your stillness becomes medicine, your truth becomes a quiet light. And without forcing it, you give others permission to pause, to go inward, to heal. But even as you begin to serve others in this new way, you don't forget your solitude. You return to it often, not out of sadness, but out of reverence. It becomes a practice, a sanctuary, a place to recalibrate when the noise creeps back in, because growth doesn't stop. The path of self-discovery is never finished. There will always be more to uncover, more to release, more to reclaim. But now you know the way. You've walked through the fire and survived. You've sat in silence and heard your soul speak. And that memory lives inside you, a compass, always pointing you back to what matters. Jung once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." And now you are awake, not in the dramatic, flashy way the world romanticizes, but in a steady, grounded way. You know what peace feels like because you've earned it. You know what self-respect tastes like because you've built it. And you know that you can stand alone, not because you have to, but because you've learned how to. And so you walk through the world differently, not separate from it, but not consumed by it either. You carry your solitude with you, not as a wound, but as a source of wisdom. You belong to yourself now, and from that place everything changes. Because the real gift of solitude isn't escape, it's embodiment. It's the realization that you were never broken, never behind, never forgotten. You were simply being carved into something deeper. Now, you are ready. Not to go back to who you were, but to move forward as who you've become.